What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of RotoGrinders Crunch Time here on a Sunday afternoon. I am Justin Van Zuden, joined by Keith Eister today. I'm STL Cardinals 84, and we'll introduce Keith in just a second. But for those of you out there watching, Crunch Time is sponsored by Fanduel, and don't forget the Fanduel Single Entry Series is back. $50,000 in bonus cash up for grabs. We've still got 4 weeks left in the contest. It's in the third week now. Your top 4 scores each week will count towards your combined score. Players with the highest combined score in each series get paid the bonus on top of regular contest payouts. The top finisher in each series also gets an all expenses paid trip to the Single Entry Series Championship in Chicago on September 9th, for a shot at a $10,000 grand prize. I bring that up now at the beginning of the show because if you want to get in today's contest over on FanDuel, there are only 160 spots left in that contest today. You're going to have to get into there in the next 5 or 10 minutes if you want to get a spot in that FanDuel Single Entry Series on FanDuel today. So again, I'm Justin Van Zuden. We'll be hosting the Crunch Time here. We'll go through this fun Sunday MLB slate with you, and Keith Eister along with me. Keith, how you doing today?
Yeah, doing well. Got a nice little slate here on a Sunday. We get Coors on FanDuel, not available on DraftKings, so a definite distinction depending on which site you're playing on today. But yeah, some good pitching. Tough matchups for some of the good pitching on the slate, but we've got a couple guys that seem set up really well. Should be a fun slate to break down here.
Yeah, last night's slate was interesting as well. We had both Jacob deGrom and Corbin Burnes pitched really good games last night of deGrom and Aaron Nola head-to-head in a game that ended up 1-0. So I won my bet on both teams to stay under 7 runs. A real sweat there.
Just squeaked it out, yeah.
I squeaked it out. So, yeah, everything's rolling well. And we've got some good pitching on the slate again today. Yet another good pitchers duel there in New York. You've got Chris Bassett going for the Mets today, and Zach Wheeler going for the Phillies in what should be another pitchers duel. The first 2 games in that series have been 2-1 and 1-0. So not that we have the elite level of aces like Burnes and deGrom going today, but the depth is there. There's quality pitchers on almost every team that's out there today, and that's going to limit your options for offense. So if you are playing on FanDuel, you do have that Coors Field game to talk about for the bats. If you're playing on DraftKings, your options for hitters are going to be a little bit more limited. So if you're playing on both sites today, your lineups are probably going to look a little bit different depending on the site that you're playing on. But pitching, though, should be relatively constant between the 2 sites because you aren't obviously probably using a pitcher in Coors. So I mentioned Wheeler. I mentioned Bassett going against each other. You've also got Kevin Gausman. You've got Shane Bieber. You've got Christian Javier. You've got Martin Perez, who was an all-star this year. You've got Tyler Anderson, who's been really good. You've got Lance Lynn, who has struggled, but gets to face the Tigers today. You've got Miles Michaelis on the mound. So, I mean, there's 10 or 12 decent pitchers today. How are you parsing the top guys apart here?
Yeah, lots of options here. Wheeler being the most expensive, having a difficult matchup against the Mets, who just don't strike out a ton. Nice ballpark upgrade for him going into Citi Field, but that matchup with the Mets is a scary one. Wheeler's not an elite strikeout pitcher. He's been around 27%, 28% strikeouts this season. But that matchup against the Mets, I think, really limits his upside here. So I'm looking a little cheaper. I think Christian Javier and his matchup against Oakland is where I'm looking. He does lead the slate in strikeout rate, 32.5% on the season. You get a couple hundred savings from Wheeler. This Oakland team just doesn't offer any resistance. They've been, if you go by WRC Plus or WOBA, the second worst offense in baseball. So just a great matchup for Javier. We're generally concerned with his leash and his walks. Oakland just doesn't walk very much. So that's a pretty big boost to him. I think he can get pretty deep in this game, and we know about the strikeout upside. So Javier, I think, is the option here on FanDuel where you can only play one. We can talk about Lance Lynn, who is also in a phenomenal matchup against Detroit, who has been the worst team in baseball against right-handed pitching. It's been a little bit of a struggle for Lynn, who dealt with injuries in the year, but I mean, he's been a solid performer. I wouldn't say he's been as good as what we've seen the last couple of years, but this matchup against Detroit is as good as it gets. significant savings even on FanDuel here. Save $1,600 from Javier. I'm going to prioritize Javier on FanDuel. I just think that the strikeout upside is so much greater for him. On DraftKings, Lance Lynn is only 6,800. So while I don't like the ownership number on FanDuel, I think he is just a lock button type of play on DraftKings because that price tag is so attractive. The matchup just gives him a really high floor, a little added extra ceiling as well. So lock Lynn on DraftKings. I'll probably be underweight on FanDuel in tournaments, especially with that ownership number. And I'm going to be fading him for some of these guys in between here in the salary. Gausman had a pretty decent year. Tough matchup for him against a low strikeout Cleveland team as well. Bieber just below him, another tough matchup against Toronto. Going to have trouble getting to those guys because of their matchup. Bieber strikeouts have been way down. Gausman has dealt with his inconsistencies. So you mentioned Chris Bassett here against his Phillies team. I think Bassett is my favorite tournament pivot on FanDuel. This Phillies team, just without Schwarber and without Harper, is not very scary. There's still some talent on the offense with Hoskins and Real Muto. Hall has been decent. Bohm has been decent, but they're not as potent of an offense without their two best hitters. Chris Bassett has been really solid. Super long leash for him. Great ballpark to pitch in. He would be my favorite tournament to get off of Javier. Tournament pivot to get off Javier.
Yeah, I mean, Javier is clearly the option if you're looking for safety because of the matchup against Oakland. And you mentioned all those other guys have relatively tough matchups. Bieber, Wheeler, Gausman against a low strikeout team in Cleveland. And I do like him on DraftKings as a pivot away from Lynn. Similar to Lynn being cheap on DraftKings, Gausman's the same. He's pretty affordable on DK. So if you're looking to get away from the Lynn chalk on DraftKings, I think that Gausman is reasonable in tournaments. But tough matchups for all these guys. And the other guys that maybe don't have as tough a matchup, say like Logan Gilbert's been really bad lately. Tyler Anderson, Michaelis don't get you a lot of strikeouts. So it's difficult to see the ceiling in those guys on a slate like today where there's so many pitching options. I kind of debated earlier, like if you're loading up on bats, do you go with somebody like a Braxton Garrett or maybe even Bryce Elder on FanDuel is like minimum salary, reasonable prospect against a bad Marlins offense, but it's just tough on a deep pitching slate. Maybe you can sprinkle it in if you're doing like 50 plus lineups, but if you're only doing like 5 or 10 lineups, it's tough to get to those guys. So anybody else on the pitching front for you?
Logan Gilbert, I do have some interest in. He's had some really tough matchups. He got the Yankees and he got Houston. He was having a pretty good year up until a couple hiccups here recently. I like this matchup for him against Texas. There's a lot of strikeouts at the bottom of the Texas lineup. So if he can get around Semien and Seager, I think that he has a little bit of upside. His price tag on FanDuel is significantly below that top tier. So I don't mind a couple of tournament shots on Logan Gilbert. But outside of that, I don't like Braxton Garrett has seen strikeouts really skyrocket here recently, but this matchup against the Braves is a difficult one. They do strike out, so I can understand a shot on him. I just feel better about the floor for Gilbert, and I think there's some strikeout upside in there with the bottom of that Texas lineup too.
All right, that pretty much takes us through the pitching on the slate today. So again, we'll go through the bats. We'll talk about our favorite stacks, and we've got about 25 minutes left until lock. We'll take your questions on the YouTube feed and in the RotoGrinders Discord. If you are a premium subscriber over at RotoGrinders, get your questions in the MLB Crunch Time channel, and we will get those answered as well before we get to roster lock at 1:35 Eastern Time. About 25 minutes from now. So, all right, let's talk offense. I mentioned the slate's going to look a little bit different depending on what site you're playing on. You have the Coors game on FanDuel. You do not have it on DraftKings. And we already mentioned all these strong pitchers. So that's going to limit our options with the bats. Where are you looking at just in general for stacks and top offenses today?
Yeah, on FanDuel, where you have Coors, they're the top two for me. Not very strong pitching in Coors there today. Colorado has been much better against lefties this season than they have been against righties. They get the lefty Henry for the Diamondbacks. So have Colorado at the top. Arizona is right there with them against Feltner. On DraftKings, it's difficult because there just isn't any good offenses in great spots. The Dodgers, I do like. Singer has been decent against righty, but has really struggled with lefties. Puts Muncy and Bellinger and the like in a really good spot. Obviously, their righties are super talented too. So stacking them up is doable, and especially on DraftKings there where you have Lynn as a super cheap option, it's pretty easy to get a premium stack in there. So the Dodgers would be my first look. I also like both sides of this Cincinnati game. Great ballpark for hitting. Justin Dunn has been really bad in the minors. Just one start in the majors so far this season. The Cubs are not the most talented offense, but this ballpark and this pitch matchup for them, I like a lot of the Cubs. They're really cheap on FanDuel. There's some good values on DraftKings as well, but I think the Cubs are set up in a really good spot here against Dunn. The Reds bullpen has also been really bad this season, so good spot for them. To get away from them, I think the other side of that game, the Reds have some cheap options. You've got Fraley at near minimum price. Aquino is really cheap with some power. Just the ballpark. I do like Thompson as a pitcher, but he can give up some fly balls. This is a great ballpark for home runs. Definitely think you can look at some Reds. The White Sox I like against the lefty. Pollock leading off is a great option. The White Sox have been much better against left-handed pitching, so don't mind them. Houston is in a pretty decent spot. If you're looking for a premium stack, I would look there against Cole Irvin. Irvin's been pretty good this year, but like this ballpark for Houston, their lefties hit left-handed pitching really well. So I do like Houston if you're trying to get off of the Dodgers.
Almost the same type of matchup we had with Houston last night, so you can just replay the same analysis. Bregman is the one guy who had been struggling against lefties this year. He did hit a home run in the first inning last night, so if they can get him going for the stretch run, it'd be a huge boost to that Houston offense. You mentioned the Cubs and the Reds. That game on DraftKings as well, you got a cornucopia of like 2K-ish options. Fraley and Senzel for the Reds. Madrigal's not in there for the Cubs today, but you got some reasonably priced options. I think his Contreras is out of the lineup as well. So you've got guys like Ortega's leading off today, so he's fairly cheap. He's 2,300 on FanDuel. You got Framil Reyes hitting cleanup today. Could be a reasonable option for a punt home run type of play. So I like the Cubs and the Reds as value plays as well, particularly if you're trying to get up to maybe on DraftKings, you're trying to play two of the top pitchers instead of going down to Lance Lynn. You can use some options from that game. So, all right, let's break it down here position by position. And we'll start with catcher, where a lot of guys are getting days off. It is not a strong position today. So where are you looking at behind the plate?
Yeah, it's rough at catcher today. I think my preference would be just to punt it with Yan Gomes, 2,200 on DraftKings. If you want to spend a little bit of money here, Salvador Perez seems like the best option. Anderson's been really good, but Perez has historically hit lefties extremely well. 4,600 is a fair price tag for him and the power that he possesses. It's really rough outside of that. William Contreras has had a good year, been good against lefties. I like his price tag at 4,200 as a tournament option. Adley Rutschman, tough ballpark for him. He's had a really solid month or so here, really starting to show some of that potential that we all know he has. You can take a shot on Alejandro Kirk just because he's a talented bat, but just really don't like that matchup against Bieber. Probably just playing whoever fits into my stack outside of those guys. But Perez at the top, Gomes, if you want to punt it, I think are the top two options.
Yeah, I certainly don't mind Perez. I think William Contreras is okay. Rutschman, you mentioned. I think Perez is certainly the top option. And on FanDuel, of course, you don't have to play a catcher. You can just skip and use a first baseman, or at least we have a few more options. And particularly, you've got guys like Walker and CJ Cron in that Coors game on FanDuel. Cron historically very good numbers against lefties. This year, he's actually crushed right-handed pitching and doesn't have that good of numbers against lefties, but sample size a little bit wonky there. His long-term profile, he should still hit lefties really well. So you've got Crone and Walker in there. Connor Joe is first base eligible on FanDuel. On DraftKings, you don't have any of those guys available. So this is the one spot where your lineups will start to look a little bit different. Your thoughts at first base?
Yeah, on FanDuel, love both of the Coors guys, Crone and Walker. Going to have heavy exposure to both of them. Kings, Freddie Freeman, I think, is the option. Mentioned that Dodgers stack. He would be a premium spend for me. If you're looking a little bit for Joey Votto, he's been really scuffling here recently, but he's just 3,900. Patrick Wisdom has first base eligibility. He is one of the Cubs that's really expensive on DraftKings, 5,400, but certainly has the ability to hit a home run against Dunn, who just isn't striking anybody out, gives up a ton of fly balls. So we're going to mention several Cubs as we go through here. Don't really love any cheap options. Derek Hall is down in the 6 hole with a tough matchup against Bassett in a tougher ballpark as well. Pujols is minimum price facing Ashby. But yeah, I think I'd be spending for Freeman. I don't mind Abreu as well at 4,800.
Yeah, guys like Abreu would be pretty low owned today. Reasonable numbers against lefties. Goldschmidt is quite expensive, but will be a contrarian option. Great splits against lefties, obviously, as well. We did have somebody in the chat ask about the weather, kind of in the Midwest. Kevin Roth did tweet out, that might have been for last night. Anyway, they asked about weather in Chicago. Weather in Chicago should be fine for the White Sox game, and then the Cubs are in Cincinnati. Roth does have a write-up on that one. He has it at green-yellow and mentioned that everything looks light enough to play through, likely no issues. So seems like if you're looking for pitching, you're probably not looking for pitching in Cincinnati, but if you're looking to maybe target Lance Lynn, I don't think there is going to be a weather issue with the White Sox game today. So just to clear that up for anybody who might have been wondering about it. All right, let's move to second base. Keith, what are you looking at there?
All right, just flip my screen here. Marte hitting third on FanDuel, definitely the top option here. Max Muncy's price just refuses to move. Seems like he's coming around a little bit. A couple of homers in his last few games. Still 2,800 on FanDuel. I think he is my favorite option over on DraftKings as well. Let me see here. What is why am I not seeing? Muncy is third on DraftKings. That's why I'm not seeing him. But he does have second base eligibility on FanDuel. Altuve is in a great spot. I like him a good amount. Also have Brendan Rodgers available, who's been good against lefties. Be a FanDuel only guy in Coors. Let's see here. Colton Wong, I guess you could take a shot at. He's way down in the 6 hole. Morel is at the bottom of the Cubs lineup. So second base a little bit weak. Stronger on FanDuel, certainly, where you have the 2 Coors guys. Altuve would be the priority, I think, on DraftKings.
All right, a couple people in the Discord have mentioned that they joined late. A brief recap of pitching is requested. So, yeah, everybody pretty much in agreement that Javier is the top option because he has the easiest matchup of the high-end pitchers. I think Javier is your easy SP1 choice. Probably prefer Bassett if you are looking for a pivot away from him at that same price range. Lance Lynn is the clear SP2 chalk play, particularly on DraftKings where he's really cheap. He'll be fairly popular on FanDuel as well. If you're looking for a reasonably priced pivot, I like Gausman on DK, even though he's facing a relatively low strikeout Cleveland lineup. I just think that that's kind of priced into where his salary is, and he is probably your preferred pivot away from Lynn on DraftKings. Somebody was asking about Jordan Lyles as a potential pivot, and I don't know, he just doesn't strike a ton of guys out. I know that Tampa lineup does have strikeouts in it, and Lyles, he does have maybe a higher strikeout prop than usual. So, do you have any thoughts on Lyles as a potential pivot away from the Lance Lynn chalk?
I don't mind that. Yeah, you mentioned that Tampa lineup. They have some strikeouts. The safety for Lynn, just like Detroit has been so bad. I think Lynn is the safer option, but definitely don't mind Lyles as a pivot if you're looking to get away from that ownership. Yeah, I kind of like that one actually. Great ballpark to pitch in. A few extra strikeouts from Tampa, so I don't mind it.
All right, let's go ahead and move to third base, where again on FanDuel you've got the Coors guys. Rivera is in the lineup again for Arizona, hitting second today. Montero has been moved up to fifth in the Colorado lineup, and they're both under 3K on FanDuel. And then of course you got Muncy as well, who is second base and third base eligible on FanDuel, so you can kind of move him around a little bit. Wisdom for the Cubs at 3K, so it seems like a salary saving spot at least on FanDuel.
Yeah, definitely agree with that on FanDuel. Both of the Coors guys are fantastic. Rivera in the 2-hole. Montero has been really good since being called up. Multiple hit games. There seemed like he was doing it every game.
I think he had 5 in a row.
Yeah, crazy stuff. In Coors Field, it's a lefty. Certainly like that spot for him. Talked about Muncy at second. I think on FanDuel, you definitely want to play Muncy at second so that you can get one of the Coors guys in there. Potentially both of them with the utility spot available as well. Rojas seems like he might get a little bit left behind because he's more expensive than the other two guys in Coors. So definitely don't forget about him in tournaments. Over on DraftKings, I think you can spend up for some of these high ceiling guys. Mentioned Wisdom's price. A little bit tough to get to on DraftKings, but Austin Riley I really like. Has destroyed left-handed pitching this season. Really good season overall, but has done a ton of damage against lefties. You can always play Jose Ramirez. Tough matchup against Osman for him. Definitely like Bregman. You mentioned his homer yesterday, facing a lefty again today, who he has historically crushed lefties, so don't mind going right back to him. Yohan Moncada's price on FanDuel is really cheap if you're looking for a pivot away from the Coors guys. Definitely don't mind him today against Alexander, who's just not a strong starting pitcher for Detroit. Let's see here. Any other DraftKings values that I missed?
There's not a ton of other value, but I think it is a position where, because so many people are going to be looking to save, like you're going to get guys like Austin Riley and Nolan Arenado against lefties at almost no ownership today. So I think those guys are really interesting tournament plays.
Yep, definitely agree with that. Especially on DraftKings where you don't have the cheap Coors options. I love all those guys in tournaments for sure.
All right, lineup update. MJ Melendez has been scratched for the Royals. That came out shortly after we came on the air. So Michael A. Taylor is now leading off for the Royals. Their lineup: Taylor, Witt, Perez, Pasquantino, Dozier, Rooker, Isbell, Eaton, and Lopez. So primarily, if you had Melendez in there, make sure you get him out. We do have a lot of questions regarding the cheap outfielders. We'll get to those guys in a second. People asking about Pollock, people asking about Senzel, Ortega, now Michael A. Taylor, now that he's leading off. So lots of people with 2v2 questions on some of these cheap outfielders, of which there are quite a few to choose from today. So we'll get to those guys in just a second, and then some more of your questions. We've got about 10 minutes left until lock. Let's go to shortstop first. What are you looking at there today?
All right. So not any great options in Coors here. So even on FanDuel, I think looking to spend up for Trey Turner would be an option. I really like the price tag on Bobby Witt facing a lefty. Good spot for him. 3,200 on price tag, FanDuel price tag. So just below that top tier of options. If you need to save some money from Turner, I think Witt is certainly an option. Kyle Farmer for the Reds, grabbed the 3-hole today, so don't mind him. He's got a little bit of power. Vaughn Grissom, the Braves prospect, is up to second in the lineup. He's 2,300 on FanDuel. Cheap on DraftKings as well.
But yeah, I think he's second base on DK for 2,000.
Should have mentioned him. It's tough when we're flipping back and forth between sites here because of the difference. But yes, Grissom at second on FanDuel. I do like a good amount. Some other shortstops here. Jeremy Pena, Houston, is a guy I really like. He is up to the 2nd hole today. Horner for the Cubs is in the 5th hole, and Dansby Swanson against a left leading off. So I don't mind that.
Yeah, not as deep at shortstop today, given that some of the guys have tough matchups. Some of the guys are in the later games, and just not as many must plays at the top as what we'd see on some other slates. So that is shortstop. Now let's get to outfield, where there are obviously going to be lots of questions here. So Pollock is 2,300 on FanDuel leading off. Ortega is 2,300 on FanDuel leading off. We've talked about the Reds guys a little bit. Nick Senzel, 2,200. Jake Fraley leading off, 2,400. I think they're both 2K on DraftKings. If you're on FanDuel, you've got Connor Joe in the mix. Franmil Reyes is 2,600 for the Cubs. Suzuki's only 2,800. That's like, I just rattled off maybe 8 guys that are all value priced pretty much on both sites. And again, lots of people have asked questions kind of relating to these guys. Do you have a couple of favorites out of that group of value outfielders?
Yeah, there's a ton of options here. I do really like Pollock leading off for the White Sox against the lefty. The Cubs on FanDuel, particularly Ian Happ, just for whatever reason, Ian Happ always crushes in Cincinnati. It's a ballpark that suits him well. Fly ball hitter against a fly ball pitcher. Ian Happ is probably my favorite option on the slate today. Just 2,900 on FanDuel. The Suzuki is right there with him, 2,800, another fly ball hitter. So both of those Cubs outfielders I like a ton. I'm not as high on the Reds guys. Fraley and Senzel, both near the top of the order, are fine. But Thompson, I just think Thompson is a better pitcher than Dunn. So I prefer the Cubs guys to the Reds guys, even though you're saving a little bit of money by going to the Reds. But Pollock is the true punt that I would play. But amongst the Reds and I prefer Pollock over both of the Reds guys is what I'm trying to say.
All right. So for those of you who had those types of questions, I'm not going to rehash them. I kind of worked that into that analysis there. So I think somebody had asked Pollock or Ortega. Pollock probably the play there. Someone had also asked, I believe, Ortega or Reyes, which might depend on format. Like Reyes, I think, is the better upside play in terms of, home run potential. But you're going to get pretty close projections in terms of just points, and maybe prefer Ortega just slightly if you're looking in cash games. All right, let's talk about higher end outfielders, and then we'll get to the rest of these questions. Who is your preferred kind of spend or two at the position today?
So on FanDuel, I think you're looking at Dalton Varsho. He's in the 5th hole. Definitely like him. Grichuk on the other side in Colorado. You mentioned Connor Joe, really like him at 2,800. I don't love the spend ups. Alvarez is always fine lefty, so you can certainly go there. Betts is always fine to play as well, but I mentioned Singer splits. He's been much tougher on righties than he has on lefties, so I actually prefer the Dodgers lefties. Julio Rodriguez is a tournament pivot. Spending would be different. I don't mind against Perez. Perez has been really good, but he still gives up fly balls. Wouldn't mind a couple of shots on Julio. Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a spend up position because of how much value we have. I think you save some money in the outfield today.
All right, let's get to some questions. I'll go through the Discord first. So we have a couple people asking about Cardinal stack. So JMBP said DraftKings single entry, is the Cardinal stack viable or too chalky? Definitely not too chalky against Ashby. And then Alec Rodriguez also asking about thoughts on a 4-man stack, Cardinal stack on FanDuel. Where do you stand on the Cardinals today?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I don't like it as much on FanDuel because you have the Coors stack, which having Coors on the slate is going to lower the ownership of teams like the Dodgers and the Astros that I strongly prefer. On DraftKings, they're very much in play. They've been great against left-handed pitching. I think Ashby is a talented pitcher, definitely has some strikeout ability, but he has some walk issues too. Can have a short leash at times. So the Cardinals are set up really well. Prefer them on draft where we don't have Coors available.
All right. Let's see. DraftKings cash from BHB. Wisdom or Riley?
I like the ballpark better for Wisdom, obviously, but Riley's just the better hitter. So I think you go Riley there.
You have to go with Riley in cash. All right. NBA DFS asking Reyes or Montero, and then Raymond asking Reyes or Bellinger. We got a lot of Reyes questions today. So Reyes, Montero, Reyes, Bellinger.
I'm going to go Montero for sure in the first one. Second one is closer for me, kind of the same play. Yeah, give me Reyes there.
I think I agree. I like Reyes today. I think he's got some potential against a pitcher like Justin Dunn has I guess 107 something like that major league innings, and his xFIP is over 6, and his walk rate is like 14%. So yeah, not great.
And
Jay
extreme fly
Sam,
ball throughout his career too. So
right?
like the
Yeah,
Cubs should hit some home runs today for sure.
they are the Cubs, so you never
Yeah.
know. Kidding. All right, Jay Sams, FanDuel and larger fields. Do the White Sox go overlooked? Can't believe I'm about to light my money on fire playing these guys. No team in betting in DFS. No team has cost me more money than the White Sox have this year. I am done with them. I'm sick of them. They do profile a little better against lefties, though. Luis Robert has pretty good numbers against lefties. Abreu has good numbers. You got Pollock pretty cheap there in the leadoff spot. So overlooked, I don't know is the right term because they've just been so bad, and Pollock will have some ownership, but otherwise they won't. So I don't know, man. The White Sox have just been disappointing all year.
Yeah, they really have, but this is a great spot for them. They have some really cheap options. We didn't even talk about Eloy Jimenez. He's super cheap on FanDuel as well. Has struggled to get going with his injuries this year, but I mean, that's a really talented hitter and a very fair price on him. Abreu brings some upside. Andrew Vaughn has hit lefties pretty well. I like the White Sox stack. It's been a rough year for them, but I think they're set up pretty well today.
All right, ProShares asking for homer calls. Anybody you really like to hit a home run today?
Ian Happ is hitting a home run. Let's see here.
Conviction is
yes. I'll go Pollock.
All right, Achilles, DK Cash, Suzuki Fraley, or Franmil and Pollock?
I don't love Franmil for cash. Definitely like him in tournaments, but I think I'd go the first one for cash.
Yeah, I agree. Do you like Bellinger to complete a Dodgers stack or use Rivera as a one-off on FanDuel?
I'm always going to side with completing a stack.
All right, yep, that's me. He says, am I really playing Gallo and Bellinger over Mookie and Trey Turner in DK Cash? I don't think I would play I don't think I'd play Gallo and Bellinger in cash. You try to get maybe one of those safer Dodger bats in there. Like Gallo and Bellinger in cash is just too much risk of zeros. All right, let's see. Achilles changed his question because we went Suzuki. So we went Suzuki Fraley over Franmil and Pollock. What if you changed Franmil to Ortega, which would make it Suzuki Fraley or Ortega Pollock?
Yeah, that one's closer for me. Yeah, I think I'd go the second one there with Hagen there.
There's going to be lots of people with those kind of 2v2 questions, as I mentioned earlier, with outfielders. They're just all, I mean, there's no one right answer. A couple of those guys are probably going to go 0 for 4 today, and you pick the one that gets a couple extra base hits, and you got it. So Andre in the YouTube chat is asking Witt or Horner on DraftKings. I think even though we like the Cubs today, I don't mind Bobby Witt as a one-off. I think we'd probably go with Bobby Witt there. Dimitri is asking, FanDuel GPP has money left over for a top pitcher. Who do you prefer? We obviously both like Javier, but in a GPP on FanDuel, say you're just doing one lineup, would you still roll Javier, or would you take a chance on one of the lower owned guys?
If I only had one lineup, it would be Javier for me, just because he has so much more strikeout upside. I do really like Chris Bassett, but if I just was down to my last entry, I would play Javier today. Yes.
All right. I think I agree with that. And kind of on the same page as far as the pivots go. Well, all right. That catches us up on YouTube, and we're also caught up in the Discord, and we're also at 135. So perfect timing. We are at lock, and it'll take us through this Sunday afternoon slate. If you are interested in NFL right around the corner, we've got NFL preseason content over at RotoGrinders. Sean Newsham, PSU fans, too, bringing his knowledge, analysis, and expertise to RotoGrinders with his preseason analysis. So you can get a premium NFL subscription today at an exclusive discount. $299.99 is the full season price, includes the preseason package throughout the entire regular season. You can find the link for that on the RotoGrinders homepage. And with that, we'll go ahead and call it a day. We'll be back tomorrow for the start of the work week with our usual Monday schedule. So thanks to Eli for producing behind the scenes for us. Thanks to Keith for joining me. I'm Justin. Enjoy your Sunday afternoon, everybody, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Have a good day.